What has the pre-testing in Bahrain taught us about the 2023 cars? Due to the unpredictability of F1's new era, the pre-season testing for the 2023 season is set up in a unique way. The big rule change this year makes this a very important year for F1. Changes to the technical rules and what they mean for the car will be talked about in a different post. The cars have been changed, and they also have brand new tyres. The point is that a lot of bad things could happen. With the new cars, the teams need more information than usual. But here's how Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes, the top three teams from last year, saw Bahrain on the eve of the new season. There was some very interesting stuff going on at the Sakhir track, but more on that later. Red Bull's RB19, which has looked quite similar to a slightly revised version of the vehicle which won most of last year's races, is looking extremely good after the first of 3 scheduled days of testing. Max Verstappen, driving for Red Bull all day, set the fastest lap times, edging out Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin by a very small amount of time. While the Aston's record was established in the gloom of night, Verstappen's was established while track temperatures were substantially higher. In the early afternoon, when the track temperature was over 35 degrees Celsius, Alonso posted that time. Earlier in the day, when the temperature was even higher, he posted a lap time not much slower. The track temperature at which Alonso set his record was about 23 degrees Celsius, when traction is at its maximum. What's more, Verstappen ran a string of longer runs, with times averaging in the high 1 minute 35 seconds and low 1 minute 36 seconds. Long-term averages from Ferrari and Aston Martin were 0.6 to 0.7 seconds slower than this, with Mercedes not far behind. Although these assessments shouldn't be taken at face value, the apparent ease with which Red Bull completed their schedule and how their car was consistently the quickest on track whenever it ran, and by a considerable margin, raised red flags. And it did it with an air of effortless ease, completing more laps than any other vehicle, while appearing unfazed by the track's undulations. On the Ferrari front, firstly, Carlos Sainz set the fastest timings, but Red Bull eventually caught up. In the morning, before the track temperatures really started to rise up, Sainz produced the 3rd fastest time of the day on the same C3 yellow-stripped tyre as Verstappen and Alonso, some 0.35 seconds behind. Less laps were run since the team spent so much time working on aero rakes for the front of Sainz's vehicle in the morning and Charles Leclerc's car in the afternoon. 5th behind Red Bull, Mercedes, Williams and Alpha. The vehicle appeared to have the same low-frequency bouncing as last year's model, but it was highly drivable and grippy elsewhere, with Leclerc in particular appearing to enjoy driving it. Leclerc, who nearly equaled Sainz's time from the morning when the track was hotter and slower, completed a number of respectable length-long laps, and without knowing relative fuel levels, his times were extremely comparable to those being made at the same time by Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes and Fernando Alonso's Ferrari. Driving duties for the day were split between George Russell and Lewis Hamilton in the new W14, which lagged behind the Red Bull and Ferrari in terms of acceleration. Hamilton's best lap time was around half a second slower than Verstappen's Red Bull, suggesting that additional setup work was required. That would make it, all else being equal, which it definitely isn't, just the 3rd or 4th quickest automobile on the market right now. Although Hamilton was ultimately beaten for 5th fastest time of the day by Lando Norris, the time recorded by the McLaren was a clear anomaly given that Hamilton was well into his lengthy runs at that point in the early evening. As George Russell came in 9th and Lewis Hamilton 6th, Hamilton climbed up to 6th at the end of day 1. In this case, the Mercedes' actions didn't appear to be catastrophic, not as bouncy as the Ferrari, and Hamilton appeared to be at ease under pressure. On the other hand, it appeared twitchier than the Red Bull and the Ferrari as it navigated the curbs. Long-distance performance was fairly stable, suggesting that care was taken with the tyres. Mercedes may have hoped for greater relative pace, but it's still early and we don't know how much variance there was between the programs of each team. On the other side, every team in the middle of the table in 2022 completed more than 100 laps, and drivers like Vettel and Tsunoda were in 2nd and 3rd place respectively behind Mercedes. Tsunoda's goal for this season is to increase his points total so that he can help push AlphaTauri up the standings. Using the new period to their advantage, Aston Martin plans to return to the upper echelons of the competitive sector. Alpine has stated that they would be putting more emphasis on speed and handling than on durability this year. It makes sense, as they were able to finish 127 laps with a car that appears to be rather dependable. Of course, not everyone got off to a perfect start with the tests. The reverse was true for Alfa Romeo and Haas. In spite of the fact that they share a Ferrari engine, This is not the case. On the contrary, they each experienced a pair of issues on each side of their lunch break. Unfortunately for Haas, a coolant leak and subsequent floor damage meant they could only complete 43 laps. Due to 2 mechanical issues, Alfa Romeo could only do 32. Alfa Romeo is investigating, and they hope to get it fixed by tomorrow. The team does not see this as a critical issue that has to be rethought. 2 of the teams who entered the season with some serious doubts had good reason to celebrate after day 1. Around a month ago, there were signs that Williams may be on track to be testing ready in a manner similar to 2019. The FW44 was only used for a short period of time, but the team nevertheless managed to rack up the 3rd highest total number of laps, thanks to the combined efforts of Nicholas Latifi and Alex Albon, who each contributed 66 laps. Williams' day was going so well that it eventually shifted its attention to performance runs. Nonetheless, Alpine, which was already under pressure to produce the vehicle in time for its test on Tuesday, managed to finish the day only 1 lap short of Williams. Although the team also had problems with their DRS in the afternoon, the confusion generated when Esteban Ocon's name displayed on the timing displays when Alonso first returned to the track looked to be the largest problem they had to deal with. Yet they both finished with respectable lap totals, experienced no breakdowns, and accomplished largely forgettable tasks. External expectations were surpassed on this day by both teams. The degree of porpoising the vehicles experienced has been one of the biggest surprises of the first day of testing. A vehicle's ride height decreases or porpoises as its speed and load increase to its maximum. If the distance between them is great enough, it indicates that the downforce is decreasing and the automobile is freed, resulting in a rise in the ride height. After then, the airflow will reconnect and the ride height will decrease once again to provide the same separation. The front of the automobile will continue to bounce up and down as the cycle repeats. That wasn't evident in the majority of team simulations, but now that their cars have entered the real circuit, most of them are dealing with it. It apparently caused so much trouble for Alfa Romeo at its Fiorano test that it wore a hole in the car. It has also been an issue for certain Spanish teams. Perhaps that's why so many teams were seen today lugging around new flooring to install. We counted Haas, McLaren and Aston Martin. Perhaps others did as well. On the whole, the first day of 2023 Formula 1 preseason testing and shakedown provided a wealth of information. Most cars appear to be reliable and the teams are currently collecting as much information as they can. During the opening day of the 3-day race in Barcelona, McLaren and Ferrari outperformed Mercedes and Red Bull, but each team has distinct goals and strategies for the weekend. The official 2023 Formula 1 preseason testing takes place in Bahrain from March 10th to 12th. I will be releasing a review of the event on this site in March. Because of the extensive coverage throughout those 3 days, we'll finally get to see the vehicles in action. What are your expectations about this Formula 1 season? Will we see a surprise team maybe mix amongst the top 3? Or will Red Bull be the undisputed champion again? Let us know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. And as always, see you in the next video.